This is Remo Daily, your daily dose of inspiration. This is Remo Daily, an oasis of innovation. For your mind, your soul, your heart, connect, act, and recharge with Remo Daily. This is Remo
Wow. Please put your kazoos, your harmonicas, and your hands together for our artists in residence, but especially to welcome legendary serial connector, angel investor, corporate responsibility expert, and book author in Spain, Susan McPherson. Susan, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Felix. I am honored to be here. And Eleanor, what a beautiful voice you have. Oh my goodness. I already Googled you. I'm going to buy your albums. Wow. I've always wanted to sing, and my late mother is tone deaf, and I was afraid I'm tone deaf, so I've always been afraid. And so it's just my next life. So congratulations for all you've done. And back to you, Felix. Sorry, I just couldn't help myself.
Oh, please. It's our joy and our shared privilege here to have two amazing artists. And thank you for acknowledging us, who are joining us live every day and give us so much room to, just to feel better and feel connected. And I'm honored to host you. I have to ask you first, how are you really? How is inner Susan feeling these days?
Well, I don't want to bring everyone down, but I will tell you, I was lonely before the pandemic hit because I'm single, parentless, and childless. And the way I have dealt with my loneliness is traveling all over the world. I even went to Antarctica in January. And business has, luckily, fortunately, taken me all over the world, speaking, engaging with our clients. But it also masked that fear, right? Because when I would be on a plane or I'd be in a hotel or, giving a talk, I wasn't alone. Mm-hmm. And so when this hit, it was all of a sudden, oh my God, I have to face my demons. I do have a dog, so, there was a reason to get up out of bed every day. But it's been hard. And, but again, I can't even begin to imagine how hard it is for so many others that don't have privilege, that, are having to, had to work outside to make sure the world kept moving and running. So I don't want to blah, blah, blah about me, but I also want to be honest, right? I don't want to be that person that's like, everything's fine, because that's just not reality. And I don't think it's reality
Yes.
for any of your wonderful members, your community members.
I think everybody in this community appreciates nothing more than what you just shared, which is just honest and vulnerable. So thank you. And also, have you found something that you didn't have before as a coping mechanism, or as some sort of routine or new ritual in your life?
I have never walked so much in my life. I'm a walker. I work out quite a bit, but because my dog had always gone to daycare since she was a baby, all of a sudden didn't have that outlet anymore. Mm-hmm. And unlike if she was a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old where I could put her in front of a screen or give her a book to read or put her down for a nap, she was like, okay, what's next, Mom? What's next? And within 2 months, we were like an old married couple. She was just like, you again? So walking was how I coped. And so I joke that I have literally walked from Brooklyn to San Francisco and back, which, that has balanced out my, I've always been a wine drinker. I don't know if I've ever drank as much wine as I've drank in the past 4 months. So I figure, you know, Betty Ford or one of these places has to reopen after the pandemic, and I may have to go there right after my book comes out.
Yes, I have, and the chat is right there with you. Many walkers and also many, let's say, recreational drinkers who are right there with you. I have never eaten as much chocolate in my life as over the last 4 months.
Good for you.
Supposedly. I also have to ask, Susan, because you have been kind of like this filter for me through LinkedIn. So you have thousands of connections. You know people all around the world. Many of them are CEOs, famous people, actors. You're probably the best networker I know. And every time I look for somebody on LinkedIn and I might find interesting to invite to Remote Daily, but I don't know how to approach, mutual connection 1, Susan McPherson. It's just, it's amazing. So I wonder, how have you found yourself connecting with new people now in this virtual era? Like, have you used Zoom? Is there another tool you found? Have you found new ways of writing emails? What have you done with your art of connecting over the last 4 months?
Well, maybe I should back up a little bit. First of all, just for everybody who is attending today, a little tidbit. I know Kevin Bacon. And you know, people always say 6 degrees, and his older sister was a dear friend of mine, and I knew her for years because I lived in Seattle and she lived in Seattle, and I didn't even know until like 4 years into our relationship. But when I moved to New York City and I didn't know anyone in 2003, the first 2 Thanksgivings I was here, I spent at Kevin and Kira's home on the Upper East Side. So I just have to share that. But
you bring us all down to just 1 degree of separation. That's great.
And all it
Thank
took
you.
was to join Felix's Remote Daily today. You know, sometimes it's an easy lift, but and he's a great guy, by the way. I mean, you know, it's not like I go hang out with him or anything, but talk about authentic. But I will say that growing up, I had parents that would religiously tear articles, and this was in the 60s and 70s, from every magazine, from 5 daily newspapers, you know, which would come to our home, and they would stuff them in envelopes with a little manual typed note saying, "Thinking of you. This made me think of you." And I think we kept the US Postal Service in business. So when I grew up, I thought everybody's family did that kind of stuff. And, you know, come the 90s, when the internet happened, all of a sudden I was just like, oh, I can send an email, attach a link, you know, early days using like dial-up AOL, or, you know, remember the sound when you would connect, right? And I took that to the next degree. So, you know, fast forward to the aughts when social media started coming in. So I've been doing all this. So when the pandemic hit, it wasn't kind of like, oh, I need to jigger it up. If anything, and I did this with my company, my employees, but more than anything, I went into overdrive checking in on people that I already knew, even people I didn't know well, and just saying, hey, thinking of you, or how are you doing? I know you're alone. Or is there anything I can do for you to help you? You know, and some people would respond and others wouldn't, but it was this notion of not doing it for a response, but partially for my own neuroses of, you know, wanting to make sure everybody's okay. Maybe it was my own way of feeling less lonely. So I don't know if I changed things up or did things different. I might have just done like to the nth degree.
Now, some people have mentioned to us here on Remote Daily that when they joined for the first time, because it's not a webinar, it's an open Zoom call, we're all on eye level, they felt intimidated. Do you have advice for how to not feel or feel less intimidated when you enter like a Zoom room for the first time?
Everybody is intimidated. Everyone. And if they tell you they're not, they're full of SHIT. Even the most, you know, brilliant, beautiful, talented, you know, written 10 books, you know, won a political office, they're scared to death every day. And I somehow, if I know that, thinking that, I'm just kind of like, well, that's me. So we're all in this together. And, you know, the rare few who aren't, well, God bless them, right? You know, I had an informational interview with a young woman who's looking to get into corporate responsibility on Saturday. And I was driving out east, and we talked for about 45 minutes, and she had a whole, very professionally, these series of questions. And she came to the one, she's like, what do you do? Have you ever had imposter syndrome? I'm like, honey, I have that every day. And you could just see the like relief that just poured out of her. And I said, I promise you, if anybody says that they don't get nervous or want to run and hide in the bathroom at times, they're not telling you the truth.
The truth, Susan, and thank you for your advice here, is also that you ran, and I heard you talking about this on a podcast, into glass ceilings in the corporate world, and you at 48 decided enough of this. I'm gonna break off, hang a shingle, and start out on my own. You were at a VP position at PR Newswire, the world's pioneer, I think, organization in commercial news or commercial news distribution. So what was the moment when you really decided to leave corporate America, which was 10 years ago?
Not to make this a sexist discussion, but I think the women on this call, if you're close to my age, I'm 55, coming up in a career in the 90s, there was often one woman who made it through the glass ceiling. And sad but true, that one woman closed the door behind her because, for all sorts of reasons, but mainly she didn't want to lose her position. There weren't that many positions that were going to let women, and certainly women of color, forget, not even a chance. So, here I was in the aughts and just bumping up. There was no more advancement. I also, though—
Anne just says it's not a glass ceiling, it's a glass floor in the chat. So
exactly,
there you go.
Exactly. Thank you, Anne. And, and again, that's an overall generalization, and I want to make sure I'm respectful of the men in the audience that probably have done wonderful things about helping women push through. But I think this was an interesting time, and, we're obviously feeling a lot of repercussions of things that happened, in years past. But I did, after I left PR Newswire, and I will tell you, I had 17 wonderful years there, and got to do open offices in China, create new products. I was always the person when there was something to be done. It was like, oh, she'll get that done, like one of those people. I always said my epitaph's going to say she got shit done. Anyhow, I did go to a boutique consulting firm to lead the corporate responsibility practice at Fenton for several years. Not several, but 3 years after. So there was that. And then there was a dearth of talent. And if any of you have ever worked in the consulting world, when consultants leave, you can't really be successful. You're as good as the people. And I knew I needed to do something. And 2 organizations said, Susan, if you leave, we will hire you as a consultant. So this is where the story's a bit different. I didn't gung-ho say, I'm going to start a company. It was a lifeline, and it was something I named it McPherson Strategies. I never would have named it McPherson Strategies if I thought it was going to last. And the reason why is it's my ex-husband's name. We divorced in 2003. He's a great guy, but it's 2020. Number 2, it's the ultimate in narcissism. That's not me. So anyhow, that tells you, I left on a Friday. I started on a Monday because I thought the 2 organizations would change their mind and I would be without any income. And I hadn't gone a day without a paycheck since I was 15. I was one of those kids that my parents were like, you got to figure it out. I mean, they were lovely, but they were also children of the Depression. So yes, and this is where it connects to the book and what we're talking about today. The business took off. And it was all those people that I had met with in my 20s and 30s that somehow remembered me and were like, oh, well, we're going to send you this business and we're going to send you that business. And I was kind of like, really? And now we have 10 employees and, we're having, we're doing really well even during the pandemic.
And
Sorry,
Beth is answering, and
story.
Beth is asking, how would you rename your business today? What would you call it today?
Oh gosh, you know what? I might need to have my team join for that. It's a very long and arduous discussion. And I've talked to multiple naming firms that want to charge $25,000 to help us come up with a name. And I'm just like, you know what? I'd so much rather give that money to charity or, help other people or provide fellowships.
This is a great community. I'm sure we will see some names popping up here in the chat.
I love it.
Degree of separation is one that comes to me spontaneously as a name for you, because you're really putting everybody in one degree of separation to so many people. What, when you started out and now looking back, what was your biggest challenge in actually building the business? You said you had a pretty good start. There was a lot of sparks that went your way and that turned into business. But when you look back now, what was your biggest challenge in starting out?
I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I am not like a spreadsheet maniac. Accounting. I hate to say this because I'm that like, what's the word? Typical girl, but no, because we know there's plenty of girls that are astrophysicists, but I'm that liberal arts, history, not a businesswoman. But what I did to get over my challenges was I surrounded myself with people who knew how to do the things I couldn't do, people smarter than myself. And that was the best thing I could have done. And a consultant who was working in the environmental consulting world gave me some tremendous advice. And, this can be used anywhere, but she said, there is a tendency when business is really good, if you're a solo entrepreneur or a small, business entrepreneur, that you hunker down and you like save for like a rainy day. Like kind of, I kept thinking of chipmunks and how they put all their nuts just in case. And she said, when you're flush, that is when you need to be out speaking, Zooming, everything else, but get people around you who can do really good quality work so that you can continue to do what you're doing. And if I hadn't had that advice, who knows where I'd be. I have no idea.
And I also have to ask you, because you mentioned it before, what do you learn about this huge phenomenon, not only sexism, but really like ageism on one hand, that you were probably confronted with, and on the other hand, maybe the advantage of not being the youngest in the room?
Well, Felix, I think I explained to you. I am completely tiny. My license says I'm 5 foot. However, even with heels, if I walk into a boardroom and it's, 80% men, I feel extraordinary. I mean, it's scary. Not because somebody takes you less seriously if you're tiny, but they just don't see you. And it's probably why I'm so damn talkative and loud, because that was the only way as a child I could get anybody to pay attention to me, including, my loved ones. So I think it's a combination. So when I was younger, I looked very young. Now that I'm old, I don't look. It's all, old is what is it called? Old is
a concept, a relative concept.
Yes. But, ageism is definitely a thing, and I think it's in this employee market for sure. And I know many women who left to go start their own things for that very reason. The good thing or the bad thing is nobody thinks I'm young anymore. So they tend to think you might know something, which when you're 20 and 30 and look 18, that hurts. But it certainly, and I don't know if I'm answering your question, but it definitely contributed to why I have found like such energy in being able to direct my own future rather than being dependent on others who may take a different view because of the way I look or my size or the way I talk. Yes.
And it's a real thing. And I want to thank you for sharing some of your challenges that you have had here. I mean, I have met you in many rooms, and I never even thought about your height, because you have this personality that just comes in and makes everybody look up to you, no matter, where they are. So,
can I reflect to you? I've had people meet me after, engaging with me online for years and say, "You're so much larger online."
And you are not only, you know, this source of energy and a sun for so many people that are, you know, just, I guess, circling your universe. You're also doing very important business. You're in the business of social impact, of helping corporations to be better, to be sustainable. Apple just made the huge announcement, I think it was this morning or yesterday, that you are trying to like embed within these companies. So when you look at on the last 10 years since you started out, which I think it was a decade since you left corporate, what work are you most proud of?
Wow. We have, you know, again, it's my team. They're incredible. I have to say, I'm really proud of the fact that clients continue to come back to us, which is, there's not a greater sense of joy. We launched just this past June, in the midst of the pandemic, the new X Prize, which is all about future of work and future of work around marginalized communities. That is something so exciting. It's a $6 million prize. Last summer, we were able to galvanize 360 CEOs to step up and state the abortion bans were bad for business. And this was the first time that the corporate America said anything about reproductive rights. We were able to get there to sign a letter that stated, "Don't ban equality," because we knew in the states where these bans were being passed, it was going to harm female employees. And that ad ran in the New York Times and then got tons and tons of news coverage. You know, and then just over the years, the work, I mean, Salesforce, Dell, Tiffany and Co. Foundation's support of ocean conservation, the Women's Philanthropy Institute, which is all about getting people, women all over, to realize they don't need to be millionaires to be philanthropic. So, I mean, this is the kind of work that we do. And it's extraordinarily fulfilling during any time, but right now, given the state of the world, it does give you some extra oomph those days when you're like, the world is falling apart, but you feel like you're doing something that's putting some good out.
And you continue doing this in the virtual space. You told me that the Lower East Side Girls Club, who I think you were a big pillar of, just raised hundreds of thousands of dollars on a virtual call like this one. So it works even during a pandemic, and congratulations to all you do. For your book now that you're writing, I mean, it's slated to be published in March, so I don't know how far you are. I know it's scary to write a book.
The manuscript is due August 3rd.
Okay. All right. Wow. Okay. So how, like, where are you? Are you through?
We're reviewing. You know, the book, and have we said the title yet?
The Lost Art of Connecting?
Yes. But the subtitle is the Gather, Ask, Do method of building meaningful business relationships.
Gather, ask, do.
And there's a reason for that, and that is gathering people together, asking how you can help, and then actually doing is the way that I have always approached connecting. The challenge, of course, is how do you gather when you can't physically gather? And so this book, the thesis was put forth long before the pandemic. So in the interviews that have been done since the pandemic, I didn't want to change the book to be about communicating during the pandemic, but it's also the elephant in the room. And the interviews with people have been extraordinary about how they have been connecting, how they have been changing, but in many cases, really doing the same thing, but you know, using all the means at their disposal, whether it's DM, text, Instagramming, Zooming, Google Hangout, you know, shouting.
Every channel.
Yeah, exactly. And really meeting people where they are, because some people are more comfortable with the telephone.
I hear you. I mean, you talk to amazing people. You told me you interviewed Adam Grant, the organizational psychologist that has, you know, is like kind of like a pope in his craft. To CNN host Brooke Baldwin, to somebody who's like really speaking to a large audience every day. Are there other lessons that you learned from these people that you can share, maybe one or two?
Sure. Well, you mentioned Adam Grant. I'll say his commentary was the similarity isn't always what draws people together. If that were true, we'd be friends with everyone we went to high school with. In other words, there's an assumption that we gravitate towards people that are exactly like us. Now, there is some truth to that, right? I mean, sociologists show, you know, and which has been somewhat detrimental to our society, that we tend to surround ourselves with people who look like us. But he contends that that is not what draws people together. And then, you know, meaningful business relationships can look very different to very different people. And it's important when you are going about creating or trying to create a meaningful relationship with somebody that you actually be upfront and state, I'd love to get to know you better, and here's why. And here I can share maybe one more. Relationships are made up of tiny touch points that are built, you know, sometimes over many, many years with the smallest, quickest gesture, like an Instagram DM, or, you know, if someone is suffering or ill, you know, reaching out. So I think sometimes when we meet somebody, we feel like we have to talk all about it, you know, and get everything out right then, which, you know, is almost like sleeping together on the first date, right? You leave nothing for the next one and the next one. And I think it's better to take everything in a more like normal human way, whether we're doing it online or in person. I mean, I would say those are 3 pieces of advice that I heard from people.
Thank you so very much, Susan, for sharing this. And for maybe a final thought, I just want to go back to the chat. Was lighting up. Jennifer, she said you're a true leader, but also mentioned earlier, she's also experiencing ageism in her own career, which has spanned huge organizations. And thank you for sharing this, Jennifer. So is there maybe, you know, a last piece of advice that you can share with us, especially for the people here in this room or listening and watching on the streams that are in this moment when they experience just age becoming feeling like a burden? Do you have one piece of advice that maybe you have received or built up within yourself that you could share with us?
You know, again, everything seems so clouded sometimes because we're living in this weird dystopian world, you know, with just, you know, racial reckoning, a pandemic, you know, a belligerent leader in Washington. And, you know, so it's hard to like, you know, think deeply. I tend to be more moment to moment, but I do find that it's taking the onus off myself and always just reaching out and finding out how others are doing and how I can be helpful to them. Not to the point of like, I'm not taking care of me, but I think that, you know, you gain so much when you support others. And I'm not suggesting you do it for just the self, like, you know, gratification. I say it just, you never know what you don't know. And everyone you interact with is connected or knows something that you don't know. And I think, you know, now's the time for us to be just overwhelmingly curious and considerate and kind.
What a beautiful way to end this conversation. Be kind and think about how to help others and build on small touchstones. Just very, very few of the many things you shared here with us. Thank you so very much. A big applause for Susan McPherson, the founder and CEO of, it is still called like it, McPherson Strategies.